rather find a young band with new talent than a 55-year-old bloke who's given up on ever writing his own songs and thinks, oh, Charlotte, I'll just earn good money playing at weddings. You know, so that to me is one of the big sort of negatives. But people enjoy it and it brings a lot of people in. So it's just my perception of it. But listening to bands, I mean, what I love is I was recently over in Indonesia. And a guy gave me a CD of his band, and they're these little skinheads from Indonesia, and they're playing their music. But we are skinheads. Rah, rah, rah. It's not the sort of thing that perhaps I would want to listen to every day of the week. But what I love is the fact they're doing it. And musically, I think the best band I've discovered in the last, well, quite some time is a band called Dakka Skanks. And they were a band that were just presented to me. I mean, I'm always booking. I book a whole mixture of bands. I go for the old, the young, the different genres of music. And somebody presented Dakka Skanks to me as a young band, and they were doing ska, and I said, all right, we'll put them on as an opener. And when I met them and saw them, Clara, the singer, she's got this incredible voice, which is like a soul voice. It's sort of up to the level of Amy Winehouse and you know, Aretha Franklin. She's got an incredible voice, you know, and the talent in songwriting really blows me away. And I think I'm sort of focused, I'm a bit obsessed because they are just so good, and I can see this potential and this movement in it. But that's not disrespecting any other bands. There's some great bands around. We've got a band called 69 Yobsters coming from Japan. We've got Symond coming to play this year, who are the original, very first ever ska band to ever play in the UK. They were the Bees originally. They were the backing band of Laura Lakekin, Prince Buster. You know, and they are legends, so we've got them as well. So my musical tastes are right across the board. You know, I love all the old punk. I get a bit of abuse from some people about being into Oi, but you know, Oi was a meaning at the time. You know, in '81 it was a protest. It was a protest music, and I loved the fact that people would stand up and they would say their point. And as 16-year-old kids, you know, it was our voice. I don't particularly, you know, as years have gone by, I find there's a lot of these bands that are just copying and they haven't got the passion. If I meet young bands now, even if they're Oi bands and they want to write about protest, I say to them, write about what you feel right now. You know, don't write about working class and race and all that crap. Write about what you feel. You know, is it social media that you're upset about? Is it the fact that rents are too high? Is it the fact, you know, this is what's affecting young people now? So if you're an Oi band, write about that. I don't want to hear about you pretending you're living in 1981. You know, I want you to write about 2019. So yeah, musically, I won't name bands and as my best and that, because I think that all of them are all part, and I don't think it's my right to say what's the best and what's the not. I know my personal stuff, which is like Dakka and the stuff I do, but I think it's all part of it.
You've been travelling around Spain with Dakka Skanks and also working on a new venture, Reggae on the Beach. Tell us all about it.
Well, like I said already, with Dakka Skanks, I found them as a young student band about 2 years ago. And because of the quality of music, I just had to throw myself into it. So you know what I've really achieved with Dakka Skanks in myself has been a real I don't know the word for it really, but what I've really amazed me is how many people I know and how many positive people there are in the world. Because the trouble is with that social media that you were talking about earlier is that social media can put you into this hole and make you depressed. It can bring you down. You start believing all this crap that's being thrown at you. But when I found Dakka Skanks, I put it out there. I said, right, I've got this great band. Who wants to help out? We've had promoters all over the world contact me. I've got producers. I've got Chrissy Boy from Madness booked them as a support. Spider, you know, who worked with, you know, Lee Perry Band and Laura Lakekin and everything. He's produced them for me. You know, I'm getting calls daily about, you know, we're now doing a 5-day tour of Spain. And it's all through friends, it's all through people I know, and these are people I didn't even know I knew. Some guy wrote to me yesterday from Colombia, he wants to book them over there at a big festival, and that's purely because I know a couple of guys in Colombia. I've given them a few CDs, and already the word's spreading, and it's building. So the community of the skinhead world is incredible. I mean, even down to things like my washing machine broke a few years ago, and I thought, shit, I need a new washing machine. Within 2 minutes, some guy said, oh, I've got a brand new one in my shed, I don't need it, I've just got a new wife, we've got 2 washing machines, so he gave me a washing machine. Simple as stuff like that, you know, and that to me is what it's all about. I think I lost my question. What was that question? Oh yeah, about Reggae on the Beach. Right, well, Reggae on the Beach, which is where we're at now. Have a little flick round with the camera and look at all these wonderful people here. Yeah. This is the Costa crew you're looking at now. All of them, especially this guy. Yeah, he came. Miserable fucker he was when we met, but he's all right. But basically what it is the Skinhead reunion is doing really well. And people come to Brighton from all over the world. And I thought to myself, I got two reasons. They're both quite selfish. One was, because I was doing tours, I wanted a place we could rest at, have a bit of a break, and get a new event going. So I thought, well, if I can find a place we can head to, because basically when you're touring, you hit a venue, you play, you get in your van, you drive off to the next place, and you do that time and time. And then after you're getting 10, 12 days of that, it starts knackering you out. Now, we've been on the road for 3 weeks, so I thought, right, we'll book a place down in Spain, which is a good point to get to. I'll invite everyone to it, so we can have a nice little week's holiday, and then carry on the tour. And also, I want to bring the European scene up, because in the UK, the scene's booming. When we started the Skinhead reunion in 2011, there weren't no skinheads in England really, very, very few. Most people who came that first year didn't even own a Fred Perry anymore. They were all like trying to borrow bits of clothing to look the part. But now you've got events on every single week. The scooter scene's all building again. The ska scene is massive. You know, you got ska festivals on pretty much every week. I'm not sure about really what's going on with that. You've still got a couple of big punk festivals, but it's booming in England. It's an older group. I've been trying to work on getting the young bands in and the younger people in, but I think Europe, what I've noticed in Europe is it's very segregated. They've got a real issue with politics. There's a lot of bad energy about it, but there's also a lot of really good energy. So what I thought to myself is if we can get a ska-based event in Spain, I can invite all the bands and the DJs and people from around Europe. We can hopefully start building a new event. But if that doesn't work, we can basically get a great holiday, and about 200 of us, hopefully, within a few years, will just have a great party and a great holiday. So that's really what it's all about, and keep our scene alive, really.
I recently read an article on Subcults where you defended Dakar skanks against ridiculous rumours of racism. Do you think the stigma of racism will ever fade from the subculture?
This racism thing is just absolutely ridiculous. Skinhead started in the 1960s. My mum was an original mod, right? She was a 1950s mod, not 60s, 1950s mod. And they used to go to the jazz clubs in Soho, listening to modern jazz. There was modern jazz and traditional jazz. And they listened to modern jazz, which was stuff like Miles Davis, right? And they called themselves the mods because they were into modern jazz. And then you had the modernism of the 1960s. You know, all the square buildings and the stay-pressed trousers and the Italian suits. This was called modernism. You look at the buildings, it was all square and everything was straight, and this was all about modernism. And modernism was all about looking for the new thing. Like my mum used to work at Shell in the office, and then on a Friday she would go to a tailor's in Soho or a friend or get some shoes made, and it was all about being like, look at my shoes, I've had them handmade because they are the best. And if anybody copied them, then they were no good. You get on to your next thing. The music they were into was jazz, which was black music. It was the underground, because in those days the BBC didn't play black music. It was underground. It was not BBC. So this is what the mods were into. The next generation of mods were the skinheads. The skinheads were into the next generation of black music, which was ska and reggae, which was started to be written in around about 62, 63, 64, that sort of time. So this was the next generation. So you had the 50s that were listening to modern jazz. You had the 60s, they were listening to ska and reggae. This was black music. So when those original Jamaicans came to England, they brought with them their music, they brought with them their style, which was the whole families would save up all their money to buy their kid a nice suit to go to London to be proud of his family and become a nurse if it was a woman. If it was a boy, he'd become a bus driver. They were jobs that the British government needed filling after the Second World War. And so when they arrived on those early ships, they were all dressed pristine because the families had all put the money in for this nice 3-button suit, and you had all the what's that the clothing stuff in America? It was like I can't think of an Ivy League. You had Ivy League clothing, which was being sort of produced in sort of California, and it was all like really bright coloured check shirts and stay-pressed trousers, and it was just that Man from U.N.C.L.E. look. When you see that film, the TV series. So they mixed up these two looks. And when it came to England, the British kids, because you got to think that rationing had only just stopped. So clothing then was a real major thing, because clothing was very based on your class. So like before then, people wore the clothing of their work. So a miner would be wearing a donkey jacket and a flat cap. You know, a bloke who worked in the city had a suit on and a bowler hat. And Britain was very much regimented, and you could be identified by your class and your job by the clothes you wore. Whereas when the youth culture started with the Teddy Boys, it was about rebelling against that. The Teddy Boys wore Edwardian suits and created the Teddy Boys. When the skinheads came along and the mods came along, they were taking what's now and they were going against the class system. The hippies went the other way. They were like the rich kids, but they were scruffying it down. The skinheads, who were the poor kids, were hamming it up. You know, they were buying the expensive shirts and the nice clothing, spending all their money on it, and created this youth culture. So that was what it was all about.
What about politics in general? Are skinheads meant to be foot soldiers for political agendas?
No, it's a simple fact of that. You know, when the basically that all goes back to the National Front. The National Front in 1976 to about 1978, they decided they wanted to cause a revolution. Basically, if you read the history of Lenin, of Stalin, of Hitler, what they do is they cause a revolution. They cause chaos. The idea is to have a revolution. When society breaks down, out of that comes a phoenix. It comes out of the flames, and from the phoenix, you get a new era. Like Hitler came to power. You had the communists, the Bolsheviks, and the fascists were fighting each other. There was chaos in Germany. They'd been wiped out by the First World War. When the Wall Street crash happened in the 1930s, it created worldwide. The banks crashed. You know, there was mass unemployment. There was chaos. So Hitler got his golden hand and created the Nazi Party, and then created the Second World War. My grandfather was in Dunkirk the day the fuckers attacked and fought the Nazis from there and then on. You know, in Britain, the National Front were trying to use the chaos of the 1970s, because after the 1960s, when they gave away the empire, by the 70s, there was chaos in England, mass unemployment, all the industries were closing down, there was strikes everywhere, there was all these political groups. You had the Socialist Workers' Party, you had the CND, you know, campaign against nuclear disarmament. We had the Berlin Wall up, we had the IRA and the UVF in Northern Ireland killing each other and bombing people. You had chaos, and the National Front were trying to use that, and what they were doing is they were recruiting the working class white kids on the estates. So they were, and the biggest youth culture at the time was the skinheads, and they were the most aggressive, so they were great foot soldiers because if you get one, you get them all sort of mentality. They were also going to football matches, so they were getting like, if you get into Chelsea, you get 50 Chelsea, you get 3,000 Chelsea. There's an army that you can then send out on the streets of London to cause chaos, and that was what it was all about. And the media jumped on that because it's baddies, isn't it? It's like cowboys and Indians. You know, you got the cowboys who are the good guys and the Indians are the bad guys. So let's pick on the Sioux Indians, you know, and we were the Sioux Indians of the time. And the thing was, by 1979, Margaret Thatcher came into power, who was sort of quite right-wing, and she just got rid of the whole Labour Party chaos of the 1970s, and in the same time got rid of the National Front. So by 1981, when the Southall riots happened, there was a skinhead gig with the Foreskins and stuff playing, there was a big riot, she banned the music, but by doing that, she pushed the skinheads underground. So by banning the skinheads, they banned all those bands. So we had the two-tone bands like Specials and Madness and all those bands that were playing, you know, music that was for everybody. They banned all that. So the only ones left were the ones that were being funded by the National Front, which was the far right. So they're funding these bands who are then, you know, all the disenfranchised kids that were into the skinheads were getting sucked into this little world, and it was tiny. I mean, Screwdriver never played for more than 500 people. When Madness reformed in 1992, they played in front of 40,000. So there's your numbers: 40,000 against 500. The 500 are the ones that the media want to write about. The 40,000 they want to be ignored. And I saw all this shit, you know. And so this whole political thing is the worst energy these skinheads have ever had, because it's a negative energy. It's not about getting people together and fighting for a cause which is a good cause, which in my point of view would be, you know, equal rights, you know, power for the working class, that type of stuff, which I suppose would be looked at quite left wing, but that's where my beliefs are. Today I would be more into campaigning against plastic pollution, you know, against animal abuse, you know, against the deforestation in Brazil. That's the things I'm interested in, you know. I've got friends from all around the world. Racism just does not exist in my world, and it never has, you know. And when we were kids, when the National